Dealing with a homeowners association, it can be a real balancing act. On one hand, they're supposed to keep everything looking nice and protect your property values. But on the other, what happens when you feel like they've gone way too far? Well, we're about to dive into a legal battle that is a perfect case study for this. A true cautionary tale that every single homeowner needs to hear. So, what happens when you finally decide to pull the trigger and sue your HOA? I mean, that feels like the last resort, the nuclear option, right? It's what you do when talking has failed and you're just done. But what really goes down when you file that lawsuit? As we're about to see, the answer isn't always what you'd expect. Okay, let's just cut right to the chase here. Spoiler alert, the homeowner lost. The court completely threw his case out. Now, when you hear what he was actually fighting for, that might sound, well, pretty shocking. So we're going to dig into not just what happened, but the absolutely crucial reasons why it all fell apart. All right, so let's set the scene. Our story takes place in the Coronado Pointe Townhomes community, and it centers on a resident named Mr. Gregory Leach. He bought his home back in 2004 and over time found himself in a really serious conflict with the people running his HOA. So who was in charge? Who was on this HOA board? Well, get this. It was entirely controlled by one family. You had the president, Dimitrios Boukalis, who was also the original developer. Then you had his wife as the secretary and his daughter as the treasurer, a complete family affair. And that's a really important detail for understanding the power dynamics at play. And that power dynamic wasn't just about who held the titles on the board. No. The Boukalis family also personally owned 14 of the 26 townhomes in the entire community. Think about that. They weren't just the leadership, they were the majority owners, which gave them just immense control over pretty much every decision. So what was Mr. Leach's main complaint? What was the big issue? In his legal petition, he claimed that for more than a decade, the HOA board was refusing to provide professionally audited financial statements. He just wanted to see the books, to understand, as he put it, who has paid what. Honestly, that sounds pretty reasonable, doesn't it? But here's where the story takes a major turn. Mr. Leach's case had a problem, a really, really big one, and it had absolutely nothing to do with whether his claims were right or wrong. It had everything to do with timing. Because in the legal world, there is always a clock ticking, and if you wait too long, you can lose your right to fight, period. Okay, so check out this timeline, because this is where it all falls apart for him. In December 2009, Mr. Leach made his formal, official request for the documents. The law gave him exactly 1 year from that moment to file a lawsuit if he didn't get what he wanted. So that deadline, it came and went in December 2010. But he didn't actually file his case until November of 2011, almost a whole year too late. This deadline has a name. It's called the statute of limitations. The easiest way to think about it is like a legal shot clock. As soon as an event happens, in this case him asking for the documents, a clock starts counting down. If you don't file your case before that clock hits 0, you're out. It doesn't matter how great your case is. And for this kind of issue, that clock was set for just 1 year. And so that was that. The judge's number one finding was that the petition was, in legal terms, time-barred. Because Mr. Leach missed that 1-year deadline set by the statute of limitations, the judge had no choice but to dismiss the case. Legally speaking, it was dead on arrival. And really, that one thing was enough to end the entire matter right there. But the judge didn't stop there, which is what makes this so interesting. Even though the case was already sunk because it was late, she went a step further. She decided to look at the what-if scenario. What would have happened if he had filed it on time? And her findings on that, well, they revealed all the other fatal flaws in his argument. To really get this, we have to talk about a concept called the burden of proof. It's super important. In any legal case, the person who is making the accusation, that's Mr. Leach here, has the job, the responsibility, to provide actual evidence that proves their claim is true. It's just not enough to say something happened. You have to back it up with proof. So let's look at his first big claim. Mr. Leach was insistent that the HOA was legally required to provide a formal CPA audit, but the judge looked into it and found a huge hole in his logic. See, the law only says an HOA needs a CPA audit if the HOA's own rulebook, their governing documents, specifically requires one. Mr. Leach couldn't point to any rule in the Coronado Pointe documents that said that. No rule, no violation. Simple as that. Okay, so what about his other claim? The one where he said the HOA completely denied him access to any financial records at all. This is where evidence just becomes everything. The HOA's lawyers, they came with receipts. They had a letter confirming that Mr. Leach had in fact visited their office on May 21st, 2010, and reviewed the financials. Now, he might have felt the records were inadequate, but the evidence proved the HOA did not deny him access. His claim just didn't hold up. So the whole thing got tossed out. Why? Two major reasons. It was filed way too late, and the claims themselves just didn't have enough proof. But this isn't just some story about one guy's failed lawsuit. This is basically a masterclass in what every single homeowner needs to understand before they even think about taking on their HOA or really any big organization. So what are the big lessons we can pull from all this? It really boils down to three crucial things. First, you have to act before that clock runs out. Those legal deadlines are no joke. They are not suggestions. Second, you have to know the exact rules. It's not about what feels wrong or unfair. It's about proving a specific rule was broken. And third, and this is the big one, you have to prove it. The whole system runs on evidence, not just accusations. You have to bring the receipts both literally and figuratively. Which really leaves us with one final big question to think about. There's no doubt Mr. Leach felt he was in the right, fighting for transparency and fairness, but his case is a perfect example that passion and a sense of justice, they just aren't enough. You also have to know the rules of the game, you have to meet the deadlines, and you have to be able to prove your case. And it forces all of us to ask ourselves, when is a fight truly worth the fight?